Hi everyone, it's Julianne, and I just thought I would spend a few minutes just explaining and maybe setting some context for the second half of Module 3, Challenge 2. So when I left you guys, you had just presented your results for where you thought the hotspot should be located for our ocean track species in the Pacific Ocean. This slide I grabbed from Riley, Sky, Rachel, and Stephanie's presentation, and they actually selected pretty much the entire coastline. Oops. Along California and then going up into Canada and then also going southward into Mexico. So they chose sort of this whole region here and said that this place was a hot spot for our ocean track species. Now, for the most part, I kind of picked this slide because it was all encompassing. Most groups had a hot spot that was somewhere in this vicinity. So what your challenge is to do in Module 3, the second half, is to try and figure out, well, what is it about this area that makes it a hot spot? Why are all these different species attracted to this different area? So to start that, hopefully at this point you guys have done some background research. There's definitely a little bit more background research here than in some of the other modules. But I tried to make the questions pretty specific so that you knew exactly what you were looking for. And you were to record these notes in your marine biology journal. So some of the things I wanted you to think about and research: how is bathymetry important to marine life? So bathymetry, that is the shape of the sea floor. So on land we have topography, but then under the ocean we have bathymetry. Oh, that's annoying. Stop doing that. So that's one thing for you to look at. How do things like a continental shelf or a continental slope or an abyssal plain or seamounts or a canyon, how do those things affect marine life? After that, you're to research sea surface temperature and its effect on marine life. So what are warmer and colder temperatures? What do they mean for ocean organisms? What are the conditions that lead to high chlorophyll concentrations? And after doing Module 2, you already have some ideas about this, but you can go back and just kind of revisit that as a topic. Explain the process of upwelling. So this is a new process that we haven't talked about yet, but essentially it means the bringing up of the water in the deeper parts of the ocean, bringing that water up to the surface. And when that happens, it brings a lot of nutrients with it. So you can learn a little bit more about that. And then kind of tying all these ideas together was this question: how might oceanographic factors create conditions in the ocean that attract many species? So that question, you wouldn't find the answer in the library. You kind of have to put all the information together. Go away. Put all the information together and synthesize a response there. So that was a little bit of background research. And then also in the North Pacific Ocean section of the Ocean Tracks Library, this is a little bit more targeted research to just give you some hints about what you might find. So just a couple of concepts: the North Pacific Gyre, the North Pacific Transition Zone, the Transition Zone Chlorophyll Front, and then the role of the California Current on upwelling. So those are some pretty specific things, and you can find descriptions about them in the Ocean Tracks Library. And include those notes in your journal. All right, so going backwards, we have our hotspot. We need to know, what is it about this place that's so special? Why has it created this diversity hotspot? Do a little background information to review some of these topics. And then you can get back with your group and develop your data collection plan. All right, so again, we're trying to answer the question: why does this diversity hotspot attract so many animals? And then what are the oceanographic conditions in this area? Oh, maybe I should select this one. There we go. All right, so here are some prompts that can help you with your planning. What information do you need? What data do you need to collect? What observations will you record? What measurements will you make? How will you record your observations and measurements? What additional questions do you have, and how will you answer those questions? So again, like the first challenge in Module 3, at this point you're also creating your own data collection plan. So as a group, you have to kind of brainstorm, all right, what do we need to do in order to answer this question of why this area is a hot spot? So as a group, you're kind of talking about All right, how can we use the Ocean Tracks website to figure out what's so special about our hotspot? So what I want to do is, because I'm not there with you right now to answer some of your questions in class, I want to give you some more kind of hints and things to think about as you develop your data collection plan. And really, a lot of these hints come from the background research that you had to do. So, for example, this first one, how is bathymetry important to marine life? What I want you to do is think about, for your data collection, use the Ocean Tracks website and really look at the bathymetry of this area. So to do that, you really have to use Google Earth to kind of zoom in and kind of take a look at what the seafloor looks like around your hotspot. So, some things to think about. Does a continental shelf exist there? Is there a big canyon in this area? Is it a continental slope? Is it an abyssal plain? Having these different characteristics could change the conditions of the area. And so to really see this, I encourage you to really kind of zoom in and remember this is Google Earth, so you can keep zooming in to get a good idea of what the seafloor looks like in your hotspot. Remember the lighter colors on the bathymetry map represents shallower depths, and then the darker colors represent deeper depths. So that could be one example of the type of data that you could collect. Another aspect, if we go back to, oh sugar, I have to go back to the right module. Here we are. If we go back to our research notes, so how does sea surface temperature affect marine life? So that was something that you had to research. So what you might want to do in that case is go back to, again, the location of your hotspot. And if I was doing this for real right now, I would have on this map marked somehow where I think my hotspot is. And then I would go to the overlays, and my phone is ringing. I would go to the overlays, and sea surface temperature is SST. So you click on that tab, but then you also have to make sure that you have the year selected and the month selected. So this will be a good question for your group. You want to think about, okay, so which date and month is appropriate for us to study? Hold on one second. Okay, I had to answer the phone. So you want to think about which month and year is appropriate. So to do this, you go back to your hotspot and think about, okay, at what time of year and what were the dates of the tracks that we used when all the species were actually in our hotspot at the same time. So it'll be a question for your group kind of thinking about, okay, when we're looking at the SST or the chlorophyll data, the year and month matter. So as a group kind of decide, which month or year is most relevant to when the species were in your hotspot. If you, it might also be interesting to kind of compare different months and see if there are any differences, or to compare different years and see if there are any differences there. But that's something for your group to decide on. All right, so again, you're looking to find out then for sea surface temperature, are the temperatures warmer or colder in your hotspot than other areas? So it'll also be important if you are able to kind of take a look at the sea surface temperature in the hotspot that you've chosen, and then look at the temperatures of the water outside of your hotspot as well, and see if there's a major difference. Are organisms staying in an area that's particularly cold, or is it particularly warm, or is it kind of in the middle? That's the type of information that you're looking for. Some things to think about with sea surface temperature when you're doing your research. Do colder temperatures, do they tend to have more nutrients in the water, or is it warmer temperatures that tend to have more nutrients? Then also think about chlorophyll. So again, you've looked at chlorophyll in Module 2, and you did a really nice job kind of figuring out what chlorophyll concentrations mean. So you can use the chlorophyll map to look at your hotspot, and some of you have actually already went ahead and tried to do this a little bit, and looked at chlorophyll concentrations in your particular hotspot, and try to see, okay, well, how might this affect the organisms in this particular area? And another thing to think about is how are chlorophyll and sea surface temperature, how are those two things related? How do certain temperatures lead to higher concentrations of chlorophyll? So that could be another thing to investigate. There is that idea in your research about upwellings. So you can think about whether or not upwellings are happening in this area and how that might contribute to chlorophyll concentrations as well. And then another thing that you could do is look at currents. So we haven't done very much with currents yet. I think it's a little bit less confusing if you go back to the bathymetry map when you look at currents, but you can look and see if there are any strong currents happening in this area. And again, you have the information from the library, you get the notes that you took on the California current, so you can think about that as well. I think in the library there are also some good visuals on some of the currents and the way water is moving along the shore of the California coastline, but you can also use this overlay as well. And again, it works best when you just have it on the bathymetry map. All right, so I hope that gives you some ideas on the types of data that you could be recording as you try to figure out what it is about your hotspot that makes it kind of special. Like, what is it about it that's attracting all of these different species? Again, you're going to use the same tools that you have before. Take screenshots. When you use the screenshots, you guys are getting much better about adding shapes and captions to your screenshots to describe your observations. Make your data as quantitative as possible. So try to use the scale on the sea surface temperature or the chlorophyll maps to actually read those temperatures or those concentrations so that you have some quantitative data to compare. And try to build a case for why you think your hotspot exists. Looking through the rest of this, so then you'll have to state your claim. Why does your hotspot exist? Provide those pieces of evidence, your observations, your measurements, the research that you've done that help determine why this area is a hotspot. Remember, in your reasoning, you want your explanation, but then also you can include connections to some of these important scientific concepts that have now come up, like primary production, upwellings, food webs, those types of things. And then hopefully you'll get to a place where you're able to share your findings. All right, well, I hope that this clarifies a little bit about what you are to do in Module 3 to kind of finish that up. And I wish you guys the best of luck.